When it comes to these school threats, we're no longer sure just what to report to you. On one hand, viewers might want to hear about every threat that's made, credible or not, but reporting threats that end up not being credible can cause a lot of fear and apprehension, and let's face it, they can also result in copycat threats. Here at WUSA 9, we don't have a set policy in place anymore. Some staff, they say we should give way to whether there's an evacuation of the school. Others say wait for police to determine if it's more than a threat. This is all new territory for us. We're still trying to figure out just how to handle it. What do you think? I stopped on a corner in downtown Silver Spring, Maryland today to ask people how they wanted us to handle threats of violence on schools before those threats can be substantiated or knocked down. What do you think we should do? Should we put all the information out there or should we hold back?
I would suggest that you put it out immediately because you just never know if it's a real threat or if it's false or whatever, but you never can be too safe.
What do you think? How should we handle it?
I think the sooner the better.
As a viewer, what should we do?
It's a good question. It's a really hard call to make.
I don't think there's anything wrong with putting out information early and letting as many people as possible know what's going on.
As long as it's consistent across all racial lines, then I'm cool, I'm fine with that.
Do you get tired of seeing them, it turns out to be a false alarm? Or
I'd rather see it as a false alarm that was acted upon than one that wasn't acted upon.
So you'd prefer to have the information even if it
right
turns out
away.
to be false?
Yeah, right away, immediately.
Safety is, a primary concern and issue, so as long as it's equal across all racial lines and there's no bias any which way, I'm fine with it.
Okay, again, we're trying to come up with a policy and we want to hear from you. We want you to weigh in. Tweet me, Bruce Johnson 9, let us know what you think. Margot Susca is a professional lecturer and program director of journalism and digital storytelling at American University. You're also an expert on ethics in journalism. Thanks for joining us. So you saw our setup there. You know the dilemma. What should we be doing? What should we be reporting? What should we be holding off on?
I think that once there's police involvement, I think that it becomes more of a need to report it to the community. But I would have real concerns about the threat of copycats and just how journalists report on other issues related to mass shootings and suicide. And I think there have to be real questions about if we're reporting it in the way we report it, are we becoming part of the problem? And I think that we have to ask ourselves some real questions about this. Is it students or younger people who are trying to get a rise out of their community? Are they trying to get out of an exam and they think maybe this is a funny way that they might be able to do it? I think there are some real questions about if we cover every single thing, are we doing an actual disservice to the community? So I think once there's police involvement, we have to think about if we're getting involved. But we really have to think about copycats. And I think if that does more of a disservice to the community, we have to rethink our coverage and be more transparent in how we're covering stories, the way we cover them, and explain to the public this is what we're doing, which is what I think is wonderful about what WUSA 9 is doing here and looking at examining its own coverage.
Okay, I'm glad you brought it up first because I want to get your take on this. On Facebook, Mike said, we in the media have to be careful with reporting this type of news because of possible copycats. So you agree with him?
Well, I think that there's research that shows there is some coverage that has the effect to, that leads to copycats. There's been studies that have been done over the years. So I think that journalists have to take a real hard look at how they cover these stories. Now, that being said, I think there are plenty of parents in Parkland who would have wanted more information about the threats that the shooter there posed, and maybe they would have acted on the side of more is better. So again, we have to look at this as what is credible and what isn't. And hindsight, of course, is always 20/20. But I think putting it out or leading, if it bleeds, it leads, or in this case, if it's a threat, it leads. I think that we could be contributing to a great deal of fear and anxiety at a time when parents already are worried about sending their children to school.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about the copycat. I remember after 9/11, it was like every day we were getting these false threats, calls in to government buildings, and you could see the employees after the evacuation just lining up the street, the sidewalks. We stopped covering these, okay, even as voiceovers, small 30-second stories, and some of these bogus calls stopped. And so we do recognize the responsibility here. I think also, though, because of the stakes here, because Florida is still so new, the feelings are still so raw, we're probably going to make the mistake in terms of putting more information out there than less.
And I think what many of us have to look at, just like after 9/11, 9/11. I was a graduate student in New York City, covered 9/11. We had much of the same, same reactions as you. I think just like after 9/11, when there's a major school shooting like this, we have to reconsider what is our new normal. Right. And I think journalists have to understand how they're contributing to that new normal and how they can maybe add to the debate without spreading fear and anxiety that's already at a real high level.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I really appreciate this conversation. Let's continue it as we go along here.